Hello and welcome. This is Out Motorsports. My name is Jake, and this is the 2021 Hyundai Santa Fe Calligraphy. This is the top trim level of Hyundai's Santa Fe crossover, which is a large two-row crossover that competes with vehicles like the Ford Edge and the Nissan Murano. Hyundai is running this vehicle new for 2021 on the shared Hyundai and Kia N3 platform, which underpins vehicles like their upcoming Santa Cruz compact pickup truck, their Santa Fe crossover shown here, the Kia Carnival minivan, and this car's closest analog, the Kia Sorento crossover, which is a three-row crossover as opposed to this one being a two-row crossover. Now, the main difference between this Santa Fe and the Kia Sorento is the wheelbase. There is a 2-inch difference in wheelbase, so if you're looking for that third row, you're just not going to find it here with the Santa Fe. If you want a three-row Hyundai SUV crossover sort of thing, you're going to have to step up to the Palisade. Otherwise, Kia will sell you a Sorento on the same platform with a sort of small, sort of usable third row. But we're here to talk about the Santa Fe. This vehicle first came out for the 2017 model year, and Hyundai updated it for 2021. Now that's kind of a facelift sort of thing. However, they did move it to this new platform. And part of what comes with that platform is a whole bunch of new technology, new drivetrains, and of course a new driving experience. So let's talk about what this 2021 Santa Fe is, and then we'll get it out on the road and see how it is to drive. Now, before we get too far into this, please take a second and subscribe to the channel. Most of you watching are not subscribed already, so please hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell. We would really appreciate all the support. The more we have, the more we can do for all of you. So with that, on to the Santa Fe. Now you'll notice this one pulled up on its own, and this is because this Santa Fe Calligraphy has Smart Pack, which was first introduced for the 2020 Super Bowl in their commercial for the upcoming Sonata, which is out on sale now. And there's two buttons on the key fob here that will let you roll the Santa Fe forward and backward in and out of a parking spot. Hyundai says it's perfect for driving in and out if you can't open the doors because it's that tight of a parking space. You can use the key fob and get the car in and out. Now, like I said, that is part of this vehicle as the top trim Calligraphy trim, which comes with all the technology you would want, the faster of the two drivetrain offerings, and of course a price tag to match. So if you're looking to get into a Santa Fe but not spend $40,000+, you can get into one starting around 27 grand. Now, of course, there will be trim differences and option differences. There will also be a drivetrain difference. The lower two trim levels of the 2021 Santa Fe are called the SE and the SEL, and those both come with a naturally aspirated 2.5-liter four-cylinder engine paired to an 8-speed torque converter automatic transmission. Now that naturally aspirated 2.5 is going to make 191 horsepower and 181 pound-feet of torque. So it's enough for something like this. These weigh about 4,000 pounds in all-wheel drive form, but it's not going to light the world on fire. So if you are a speed demon, if you like having an excess of power, you will want to step up to either the limited trim or this Calligraphy. And the differences between the limited and the Calligraphy are fairly small. You're going to get different quilted leather seats, you're going to get unique wheels, you're going to get a different grille, and they've added ambient lighting. But otherwise, the limited is more or less the same vehicle, and it's a couple $1,000s cheaper. And in either case, with the limited or the Calligraphy, you will get a turbocharged 2.5-liter four-cylinder making 281 horsepower and 311 pound-feet of torque. That is a huge difference. It is another 90 horsepower and 130 pound-feet of torque, which is just so much more than you will get with that base naturally aspirated 2.5. If you're one of those people who cares about power to weight ratio, I'm guessing most of you don't know what that is. It is how many pounds every horsepower of your engine has to drag around. And in this case, we're measuring it without anyone in the car, just with the curb weight and the horsepower that Hyundai says these engines make. And the base naturally aspirated 2.5 has to lug around over 20 pounds per horsepower before you sit down inside of it, whereas this 2.5 turbo in the Calligraphy and the limited only has to move a little more than 14 pounds. So that is quite a bit of difference, and it makes this feel way more sprightly. Now, this is the same 2.5-liter turbocharged engine and the same 8-speed wet clutch, dual clutch transmission that we saw both in Tyler's review of the Hyundai Sonata N-Line and my review of the Kia K5 GT. Now, in both cases, those cars were just front-wheel drive, and Tyler and I both really liked the drivetrain and we liked the chassis of those sports sedans, but we really wished there was all-wheel drive because putting that much power and 311 pound-feet of torque through just the front wheels is a lot to ask. Now, the Santa Fe does come standard as front-wheel drive, but all-wheel drive is optional on both the naturally aspirated version, and this turbocharged 2.5. Now, with this all-wheel drive, Hyundai calls it H-Trac. It does have a lockable center differential, which you can activate with a button on the center console. There are also some drive modes for comfort, sport, and snow. And then you've also got a smart drive mode, which tries to adapt things based on your driving in the given moment. Now, with all of these sorts of family crossovers, fuel economy is at the top of everyone's mind, especially these days. And the turbocharged motor is actually not as bad as you would think on fuel compared to the naturally aspirated model. So if you're looking at fuel economy between the lower trims and the higher trims, the turbo motor is only going to lose by 1 mile per gallon city and 3 miles per gallon on the highway. So in both cases, you're going to be looking at about 24 miles a gallon, 25 miles a gallon city highway combined with either version of this Hyundai Santa Fe. Now, if you're looking for more fuel economy than that, you can opt for the Santa Fe Hybrid, which is splitting the difference in power and torque between the naturally aspirated 2.5 and the turbo 2.5. It comes in about 226 horsepower and gets your average miles per gallon up into the 30s. If you're saying, all right, gas only is what I want, and I really think I want that turbo motor, I want that extra horsepower, well, you're going to pay for it. Base model to base model, between the SEL and the Limited, it's a $10,000 jump in price. So that is fairly pricey. However, if you take the SEL, add the premium convenience packages to it, and option it up to be as close to a Limited as you can get, it only works out to be about $4,000. So it is less of a jump than you might think, but you are going to pay for that turbo motor. It is not going to be quite as attainable as just ticking a $1,000 or $2,000 option box. You do really have to step up to a fairly loaded version of the Santa Fe to get it. So with all that, let's get behind the wheel of this 2021 Hyundai Santa Fe Calligraphy and see how it is to drive. All right, so driving the 2021 Hyundai Santa Fe Calligraphy. This is the one, like I said, with that 2.5 liter turbo engine that makes oodles of horsepower and even more torque. You're gonna be at 311 pound-feet of torque and about 281 horsepower. And that's paired to the wet clutch, dual clutch automated manual transmission, which is all very good for the sake of the Hyundai and Kia sports sedans, the Sonata N-Line and the K5 GT, but I find it a little amusing that it's put here in the Santa Fe, mostly because the K5 GT and the Sonata N-Line are positioned as sports sedans. Not the most hardcore, but they are sporty sedans. And the Santa Fe is not positioned like that at all. This is considered a nice vehicle to do road trips, to carry your family, to run errands. And the 2.5 turbo is just the most powerful engine offering that they have in the lineup. So it's just kind of fascinating that they went with the dual clutch. I think it's a little goofy around town. It makes parallel parking kind of a delicate exercise because you have to really be mindful of the clutches engaging when you put your foot on the gas, either to go backwards or forwards at very, very slow speed. You can feel them engage a little bit and bite, and then you move, but it's not quite as seamless as a torque converter automatic that is destined to creep by virtue of what it is. Now, I've got the drive mode selector in sport so we can show off our sportiness, and if I put my foot down, this is plenty quick. It is really well behaved once you get it out of first gear as far as dual clutches go. First gear, I tend to find upshifts a little early, so you don't quite get into boost, which makes the car feel a little slow off the line, but once it gets into second, it will hold the gears a little bit longer, even if you have it in comfort or smart mode, and I think it does do a pretty good job of letting you use that boost, and you can get about 25-30% throttle application, and it will really stay in a meaty part of the power and torque band and feel pretty healthy. Once you're on the move in the Santa Fe, the whole car just feels like another large two-row crossover. It is nothing too remarkable as far as being sporty. It is far more geared towards being a comfortable cruiser, but it does do a really good job of being that sort of vehicle. The seats, I think, are fairly comfortable, although I'm having a hard time finding a super great driving position for my 6'1" self. I think if you're tall, obviously, do a test sit, see how you fit. kind of goes for anybody, no matter your size or your body type. I think the seats are comfortable though once you are in them. They are nicely bolstered without being too aggressive here. And as far as other passenger comfort is concerned, the suspension rides really nicely even over big expansion joints, big bumps that would try to get the car, you know, pitched and heaved and wallowing a little bit. I think it is pretty well controlled. Steering is electronic power steering that firms up in sport mode and is otherwise unremarkable. It's fine. It's not super vague, it's not super tight, it's not giving you a ton of feedback, but it's not totally dead either. It's just entirely average across the board for steering feel. Where Hyundai continues to set the bar is with all of the technology that they put in their vehicles. And, you know, drivetrain aside, the drivetrain is fine, it is plenty of power and torque, but really people buying these care about the tech and the comfort and everything that they and their passengers will experience. So you do have a very good infotainment system. It is really snappy, it is responsive, it has built-in navigation that does work really well, although it does support Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. My one complaint is that it's a nice big widescreen, but Apple CarPlay has not been configured to take up the whole width of the screen. That is something we're seeing on the newest Hyundai and Kia products, like the Kia Carnival minivan that just came out. It will do full screen Apple CarPlay. Hopefully that's just a software update for the Santa Fe, and by the time you purchase one of these, it might already be updated, but just something to note. The sound system in here is by Harman Kardon. I think it is pretty good for this class of vehicle. Certainly no complaints. It is not going to be a knock your socks off sound system that you get from a high-end automaker, but it is certainly very good. I do like the fact that there are all these buttons down here in the center console. I am not the biggest fan of touchscreen for everything, so you do have dedicated hard buttons for the infotainment system, your volume knob, your different functions for, you know, infotainment and media. You have hard buttons for your climate control. You have your push button shifter, which is great because it takes up less space than a regular shifter would. And then you've got buttons to control kind of your drive modes. There's a downhill hill assist control, there's your parking assistance, heated steering wheel, and the center diff lock button. And then you do have heated and ventilated seats up front here and heated second row seats in the back. Now, this is all on the Calligraphy trim. The lower trims will be configured a little differently in some cases, so as always, check out the trim you are looking for. Don't take my word that this Calligraphy will be equipped just like an SEL, because it probably won't. And the other great thing that Hyundai does with all of their newer vehicles is their driver assistance technology. It is not just the basics of lane keep assist that will kind of ping pong you left to right in your lane and blind spot monitoring. There is a whole set of technology here called highway driving assist that will actually lane center you and do the typical radar cruise control and things like that. It also pays attention to the set speed limits on the roads, and if you choose, it will adjust your cruise control speed based on how the speed limit on the road changes up or down. You can also turn that off if you just want to set the cruise control at 85 everywhere you go and have it hustle all over the place. But the technology in here is really well done. One button push on the steering wheel and you can go not entirely hands-free. You do have to keep your hands on the wheel and keep your eyes on the road. There are no self-driving cars on the road today, not even a Tesla, but it will drive you pretty well, and you can set your cruise control and pick up your speed and just keep your hands down here so it knows you're paying attention. Other good things in this interior, you do have this panoramic sunroof, which is on the Calligraphy trim. It does come on, I believe, the Limited, but I don't know about the lower trims beyond that. It is great because it goes all the way past the second row seats, so all of your passengers will have a lot of light in here. There is a shade that can come forward and cover it up if it's too sunny on a given day. It's really nice to have all that sunlight, although I do have to say the one in here rattles. You can hear it if your music is off, so if you have good hearing and you're bothered by small noises like that, just be warned. This one rattles. It's not a Hyundai problem. A lot of people with panoramic roofs have them rattle. I've had a Land Rover Defender that rattled. I personally owned a Ford F-150 that rattled. It's just kind of what happens when you have these massive panels of glass that you're trying to keep quiet. You can only do so much. So just something to think about, but it's really nice to have all of this extra light in here from the panoramic roof. So overall thoughts on this 2021 Santa Fe Calligraphy. It is not sporty. The drivetrain is great, it is punchy. Like I said, if you have a lead foot and you want some power and torque, you'll find it good. There's not a lot of turbo lag, and beyond those annoyances with the dual clutch in the city at very, very low speeds, trying to be very, very precise, it generally drives really, really well. So not a lot of concern there. I think you'll like it. Would I get this over the naturally aspirated 2.5 on the SE and SEL? Yes, I do think the lower horsepower 2.5 would be adequate, but for those of us who like power, it will be disappointing. So really depends on your priorities, but I would personally end up with the 2.5 turbo. Otherwise though, like I said, this is not sporty in the least. Hyundai is not trying to make it sporty, and you know, it will take a corner as well as any other crossover will take a corner, which is to say probably better than most drivers are going to ever attempt at speeds higher than most drivers will ever attempt. So it's not a Santa Fe N-Line. They're not trying to make it an N-Line car, but generally the ride comfort is very, very good. I think it's very well tuned suspension-wise. Steering is not super dead, which is just a perk. And otherwise, it's just a nice place to spend, you know, a good amount of time with, you know, you and your partner and your passengers. So definitely worth considering. All right, and that is it for this review of the 2021 Hyundai Santa Fe Calligraphy. Thank you so much for coming along today. As always, if you like what we're up to, please take a second, subscribe right here on YouTube. Head over to Facebook and Instagram at Out Motorsports, give us a follow there. And if you're looking to connect with other LGBT automotive enthusiasts and motorsports competitors, please head over to outmotorsports.com. We have a whole community over there, and we would love to meet you. In the meantime, please stay safe, be well, and we'll see you again soon.